So, Jose, today we're here to discuss a very important program, right?
Hmm.
Guns Down, Life Up. Guns Down, Life Up is New York City Health and Hospitals public response to gun violence.
Hmm.
My dear friend James Dobbins,
Hmm.
Jimbo, has been a part of this organization, this program for many years. It was started roughly about, I would say 13, 12, 13 years ago.
Right.
And in the New York City Health and Hospital system, the launch was at Bellevue Hospital, where there was a gala that was held.
Right.
It had a different name back then, right? It was started in 2011, and it was called STAT 2011 at that time.
Okay.
A couple of years later, our good friend uh, Molly Mall gave it the name Guns Down, Life Up.
Mm.
So made it a little bit more urban.
Right.
And the beauty of the program is it's embedded in the hospital as a part of a service of the hospital, where the members of the hospital, you know, that are part of this program, the staff members that are part of this program, actually go on site when a situation occurs.
Hmm.
So imagine that there's a shooting somewhere,
Right.
right? And in that shooting, the police shows up, the medics show up, the ambulance shows up. But what happens once they leave? Who takes care of the community? Who speaks to the person whose people or who got shot?
Hmm.
Who speaks to the person that did the shooting,
Mm.
right? Who tries to find out what was the reason behind it? Who tries to keep it from escalating?
Right. Getting further.
Right.
Mm.
Who tries to speak to the children in the environment that got affected because they live there, because they're going to be scared moving forward?
Right.
Who takes care of the elderly that are looking out the window that saw this and it affects their mental health?
Right.
So if you evaluate all of these conditions that occurred because of the shooting response team, between the students, between the children, between the people that are the staff members, the youth, their job to show up is to help the situation, suppress the situation, de escalate the situation with the three key components: intervention, prevention, and community mobilization.
Mm.
And this is the program set apart by the New York City Health and Hospitals called Guns Down, Life Up as
Mm.
a movement to try to enforce these things and to make that society, that community better.
Now, what motivated the idea for the program's existence? Was it something that happened that kind of, brought that about with Jimbo?
This program was necessary because gun violence
Mm.
is one of the number one contributors
Mm-hmm.
to death in this society
Mm-hmm.
and the problems that occur in a lot of the urban community. So, in order to make a difference in the community,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have people that are a part of the community that can rise up and say, well, we're not going to stand up for this no more. We have to find
Right.
solutions, right? Lincoln Hospital is one of the top hospitals in New York City that handles this kind of trauma and this kind of gunshot victims.
Mm.
And the victim is not only the person that got shot, the victim is also the person who did the shooting,
Right.
right? The mental, I guess, trauma that led him to be the shooter is
Mm.
something that we also have to evaluate.
Well, all the circumstances that
Mhm.
led to the shooting.
Sure.
And just I'm glad that you shared this with me because I personally had an experience in our family.
Really?
And I had a younger brother. It's four of us, four boys, and our youngest brother, Fernando Figueroa. He was part of a gang. We were part of a gang called the Party Riders.
This was a gang that he was a part of in the Bronx.
In the South Bronx.
In the South Bronx.
Patterson Projects. And we were breakdancing at this, part of that whole movement, but this was kind of different. There was another gang older than us called the Spanish Boys.
Mm-hmm.
A guy, basically that was not from our neighborhood, was doing some kind of carpet work, and he had this carpet like kind of behind a gate of some sort near the playground where people were playing basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Spanish boys. My brother was nowhere near this place. He came after the fact. So apparently one of the Spanish boys urinated by accident on this carpet. The guy got into an argument with him. Obviously, the Spanish boys had his whole gang, so they like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to come right back. He does come back. Comes back. He's, with his buddy, got his hands in his pocket. No one, and he starts threatening, my brother. And my brother was nowhere near this. He just kind of like happened to be there.
So your brother happened to be a bystander in this situation because of what was going on.
Right. And they got into some kind of argument. And my brother, he's a boxer. He's a tough guy, and he tells the guy, because the guy threatens him saying, hey, look, if you have a gun, which he said he did have, but he never took his hand out of his pocket, he goes, take it out. Other than that, put your hands up. Let's fight, basically, like men, basically.
So your brother basically said, listen, let's not go through a situation where the gun is necessary. Let's do it like
let's
the
fight
way
like
we do
men.
it in the streets.
Right.
Let's do it like men and put your fists up. Okay.
And instead of doing that, the guy says, yo, I'll kill you right here. I'll shoot you. When he said that, people kind of like started to back up. My brother did not. He was still kind of holding his ground. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you hear a banging shot, just bang, the shot. And everyone just cleared out of that park.
Wow.
My brother drops. They, damn, getting choked up here. They end up, basically getting him to the hospital. The bullet had tumbled.
So he got shot. So at that instance, the guy that was creating
the fact
the situation,
that it was at Lincoln Center, that's actually where my brother was taken.
Lincoln Hospital.
Lincoln Hospital, yeah. And it was basically the bullet had gone through his organs. It tumbled. So I think when they tried to surgically remove the bullet, it was in a position where it just basically he didn't survive the surgery.
How long was he in the hospital for that surgery?
I would say I'd like to say about maybe 5 to 6 hours.
Wow! So the same day when he was admitted to the hospital as a result of the gunshot wound. Yeah. His life was taken away from him.
Yeah. And then, and that was sort of one of those things.
What year was that? What year is it that happened?
I would like to say it was like 1986 maybe.
Okay, so it was many years ago.
But prior to that, and this is where, when you start thinking about God, whether or not there was God intervention, there was some intervention here. Prior to this bullet shot, a year right to the day, he was struggling with drugs. There was a situation where he had taken, I think, PCP, LSD, and he was basically tripping out badly. He tried to commit suicide. And, my older brother and myself were, in the house, in the apartment, 13 stories at the Patterson Projects. And in his kind of mental state, he did something playing where he opened the window and put half his body out the window. And pulled his body back in and closed the window. My older brother took it as, hey, Freddie's being crazy, lock all the windows. My brother, I don't know, whatever he did.
So you had an insight, basically you had foresight that there was a situation.
There was
already.
Something happening.
Right.
And the drugs definitely were a part of this. He ended up going to my room. And when I go behind him, he looks at me and he pushes his head through the glass and you see it crack, but it didn't break. And then I got like close enough to like basically touch him, like, and as soon as I got close enough, he actually went straight out the window. Wow. I caught him with my right hand and I'm holding his jeans. He had like stretched denim leaves and it stretched like a rubber band, but and his weight, I couldn't hold it. And the glass that broke through pushed into my hand. I had to let him go. So the guilt I had of like just letting go of my brother.
So then what happened with your brother?
He fell 13 stories and landed on the grass, which is where the thing. And my older brother ran. And, by the time I looked out the window, my brother was already picking up his head. And you would think that you could die from that fall.
So your brother fell out of the window, 13 stories.
Jumped out of 13-story window.
And landed and survived that fall.
Survived. And then his injuries were minor collapsed lung and minor internal bleeding. That was it. not one broken bone.
So that was definitely divine intervention that made sure that he lived to see
It
another
was
day.
not his time.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
to that letter, a year later, this situation with this gun situation ends up happening. He survived this situation, but now this gun violence. This is the South Bronx, and things were being handled in a different way, and he was innocent in the way he approached this, but part of the violence part of it, as you can see, is there's this back and forth of how people negotiate conversations or arguments. And this type of gun violence was pretty much the answer to most of these solutions. And these programs didn't exist back then.
Yeah.
So to find out that there was something at Lincoln Hospital, and you shared that with me, I was like, wow, this is so weird that you mentioned this, because my brother actually was a product of this gun violence in the Bronx.
Wow.
So I really took it to heart when I saw what you were doing with these kids. I said, this is so necessary. And if you've never had anyone in your family in this type of environment, most people won't understand that. I understood it fully, because, and so when I see that the men that are, that you guys are contributing to these kids, for them to understand the consequences of how do you deal with violence or anger? How do you, like walking away from that situation might have been an answer, but there's no tools.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Right.
Even these young kids that come in, the youth that we work with,
right.
A lot of them are, at risk, right?
Right.
They're at-risk individuals that at any moment, their mind can go into a different direction.
Right.
So our job is not only to give them an opportunity or a platform to develop their production skills, their music skills, their interacting skills, their podcast skills,
right.
or whatever other service we can provide. But we also have to look at them as young adults, as younger brothers and sisters, as human beings, and try to help them with their mental health situation. That the narrative that they came to us with wasn't only to better them in the technical world, but also lend a hand, lend a support, because they may be coming from broken homes, single parents.
Right.
Some of them are in shelters. Some of them are literally homeless.
Right.
But they won't tell us. But our job is to give them as much mental enrichment, cater to them with love, and give them, help level the playing field, for them, so they can feel like that they're equal and worthy of the same kind of
also
respect.
you're providing a skill set that they can actually take, and if they needed to get out of the hood, this is the way. There is a path that you've created that these young men and women can actually follow, that doesn't necessarily keep them in the hood. And that's a testament to the idea of this program. It's a beautiful idea. I actually even like the Guns Down, Life Up much better than Stat, because it actually rings true to what really goes down in these situations.
It defines a situation for what it is, And the other beauty of the situation, the other beauty of this program is that Jimbo has created alternative ways for the kids to even, they get paid to learn. They come here and they're being paid. They have a stipend that they're being paid. So not only are they being creative, not only are they, putting their voice into the podcast, but they're also paid for this stuff. So we're paying them to become better individuals. And that's one of the great parts of this program. That
it's a great incentive as well. Sometimes people are trying to survive, and they don't have any funds so they turn to different lifestyles because they have to support whatever it is, and just in survival mode. And for you to create an environment where they can actually, monetize their learning is huge,
I was there in the inception of this program back in 2011, where the gala was held, and it had a different name, like I said, Stat 2011. And I wasn't able to stick around at that point to see it flourish, right? I had other businesses that I was running. But James said, you know what? I'm going to stay here. I'm going to work with the program. I'm going to keep building and developing. And when we're ready, we'll meet together. 11, 12 years later, which was last year, beginning of last year, he said, listen, I'm the executive director. I know what's going on. And now the studios that you built, the facilities that we had, the dreams that we had together, we can put them together and make this happen. And since that time, we've been doing programs. The kids been doing podcasts, making music, songs about peace, songs about unity. And of course, we let them make their own songs as well because they want to have their own passion as well.
Some touch and creativity.
But we give them the platform and the studios where all these big artists have been to be able to create and do stuff where they feel like they would not have this option otherwise.
It's uplifting. You know, I think it's an uplifting, you know, presentation, that idea to create what you did and what you have created. It's unheard of because I don't think there's anything like this anywhere.
Yeah, and we're trying to make this. So this is a system-wide program. It means every hospital in New York City, every public hospital, you know, could be a part of this program.
Right.
And there's like, I think about 75 annexes. But a lot of people have approached, you know, Jimbo and say, hey, listen, this is something that should be international. Like this
exactly. That's what I was alluding to.
You know, because there's a lot of cities out there. There's a lot of places, Detroit, Chicago, et cetera, where crime of this caliber is at such a high scale.
Yeah.
And anything that can help with the prevention and the intervention and the community mobilization.
When you've also broken it down into a very systemized, you know, I think it could be standardized basically, and like Lincoln. You know, Lincoln Hospital has the template. You know, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. You know, you can actually just take it and keep it growing. And I would take it even further. Once these young men and women, you know, let's say graduate the program, if there's such a thing, they could themselves become instructors or. I mean, that would be a nice long, you know, game in terms of looking at, well, what would be the future? You get alumnus that perhaps come back and they say, look, I was a part of this program when I first started out. Now I'm a teacher.
And, you know, the other beauty of this program at Lincoln Hospitals, we have a very good executive staff there, right? The CEO of the hospital, Christina Contreras, she's a huge supporter of the initiative and the program. You know, Director of Communication, Shireen Hall, who is also a real key component in what we do, whether it's an event, whether it's, you know, stuff with the youth, or whether it's a promotional thing. So the entire team, you know, Natasha Burke, and I have a couple of other members that are also instrumental in making sure that the agenda of what we're doing with Jimbo and the rest of the team, June Balloon that you met the other day that he was here. We got our other guy, Twin, and there's a whole team of members that have contributed to the success of what we're doing. You know, we have our guy Mata, we have our guy Gilly, we have our guy Real, we have, you know, the whole team members, right? And, you know, we have another executive individual. Her name is Lynn, and Lynn is a part of, like, she understands the system, and she also helps put the stuff together that is more corporate. So there's a lot of members that they come
different.
So we have guys that are from the streets that understand the street mentality. They have people that are from the corporate world. So everybody comes together, and the culmination of everybody's ideas creates a very good pathway where these youth can find, you know, hope in any different direction. Right.
And you're covering all the bases. It's not just one person trying to control a system that's very complex.
And that's why it was very interesting when I mentioned this program. You said my brother went through this, and my brother was shot, and we ended up at Lincoln Hospital. I'm like, wow, it couldn't be any closer to your heart.
Yeah, you know, that's just why it made, you know, I felt moved, really moved when I went downstairs and I saw you guys interacting with the kids. So I went over, I don't even know and I gave him a hug and I put my head on his shoulder. He's like, but he didn't, I don't think he understands that it meant something to me because I did lose somebody. And this program would have been amazing, you know, had it been available to my brother in the 80s.
Well, Jose,
so thank you for bringing it together.
No, I want to thank you for lending your support, and on behalf of, you know, New York City Health and Hospitals, on behalf of Lincoln, on behalf of, you know, Christina Contreras and her executive team, on behalf of Jimbo, James Dobbins and his team, we all want to thank you for also, you know, showing your support and lending, you know, your service to this amazing cause. So I thank you.
Well, thank you. And just know that there's no higher purpose than to serve. And you have served immensely. So thank you also.
Appreciate you. And hopefully we'll speak to you soon.
Absolutely.